And the ultra-liberal Obama, except if you want to interpret his opposition to the war very early on as evidence of liberalism. But I think most of the country, I think 2/3 of the country was opposed to the war, so I don't think that would be the basis. In fact, I think what Obama is a stealth candidate. And people have had to become comfortable with the idea that he is presidential and commanding, but we don't really know his positions on so many issues. We don't know his position as we sit here tonight on that key union issue. And you would think, oh yeah, that would have been apparent right from the start. We know what the unions are pushing, but we don't know that Obama necessarily agrees with that. So what interested me, though, is looking at a number of these things that come out of the exit polls. And you look at Pennsylvania, which was a key battleground, and you look at things like values. If you say, who shares my values, 34%, by the way, total of the voters, McCain wins among those voters. If you say the war on terror is your principal concern, McCain wins among those voters. If you say who has the right experience to be president, again, in the state of Pennsylvania, which was carried when we called it for Barack Obama, John McCain wins. So you're right. I don't think that it's necessarily the case that we've shifted from a center-right country to somehow of a center-left. I think what you see is, again, looking through this data, you see an overwhelming discontent with things like the war, the economy, and President Bush.
So this is a protest election, really, in a sense.
I think it's a strong reaction to President Bush. By the way, I just wanted to mention, John McCain, I thought, fought valiantly these last few days. And in Pennsylvania, if you were saying that, it's about 6% of the voters who decided in the last day how they were going to vote, they split. 5% decided in the last 3 days, and they went for McCain 52-47. So what you see is that John McCain actually did pretty well in these last 3 days with the push that he made. And in general, when we look at the general election results, what you're seeing here again is, whites overwhelmingly, whites still went for John McCain. It's the influx of blacks, Latinos. They went heavily for Barack Obama.
Fred.
I'd like to respectfully correct Juan on one thing. We do know where Barack Obama stands on card check. Yes. He's voted on it. He's endorsed it. He voted. There was a filibuster where Republicans blocked it. He voted to shut down that filibuster. He didn't want to shut it down so he could vote against card check. Card check, of course, is what would eliminate, in effect, secret ballot elections in union organizing.
Has he said that, though? I don't think he said what he'd do as president, Fred. I think that's a different
Wait a minute,
position.
Juan. He's voted that way as senator.
I agree, but
he said so as a candidate that he endorsed it. Look, the National Journal, which is a non-ideological, nonpartisan publication, lists him last year as the most liberal senator out of 100. He was the 4th most partisan. Now, that's his record. Maybe he'll be different as president, but what do we look at? What he says or what he's done? The record means a lot.
I think the record does mean a lot. I just think that given what he's going to have to try to do to guide this country, he's got to go to the middle. And I think that's what we saw on things like national security, his vote there in terms of whether or not we should hold telephone companies responsible retroactively. He's changed, you know what?
He played that both ways.
That's what I'm saying. I think that's the guy that we just, that's about to become president of the United States, given what happened in Pennsylvania and Ohio.
Nina?
He is going to support card check, I think. And I think there's hope among his advisors that will enable them to have more leeway on issues like free trade that they might part ways with the unions on, first of all. Second of all, I interviewed Barack Obama a week after Hillary Clinton dropped out of the race and the primaries were officially over. And he kept calling himself, I'm a pragmatist, I'm not an ideologue, I value that. And I got one peek at where he might actually stand, and he might be more of a centrist, and that was on NAFTA, because we remember he hammered at NAFTA all during the primary campaign. He called it a mistake. He tried to outleft Hillary Clinton on all the trade issues, but when I pushed him on it, he said, well, some of that rhetoric was a little bit overblown. I agree. Now, the other thing is that since then, since the end of that primary, he has surrounded himself, when you talk about associations, let's look at who he's associating himself with on economic policy over the summer. It's all it's Clinton people, it's former Treasury secretaries like Larry Summers, like Robert Rubin, it's Warren Buffett, it's Paul Volcker, the famed former Federal Reserve chief. These are not, people who are out of the mainstream of economic policy.
Well said, both of you, all of you. We're going to head now, though, down to West Palm Beach, where people are still in line to vote in Dade County, and our man Phil Keating is down there. Hello, Phil.
Hi, Britt. 2.5 hours after the polls close in the Eastern Time Zone part of the state of Florida, and we still have about 50 people waiting in line to be processed to get their votes in Miami-Dade County, down in Brickell Key in downtown Miami, and also another 90 people still being processed, getting their votes out in Hillsborough County. That's where Tampa is. Hillsborough County, part of the I-4 corridor, crucial to both the McCain and Obama campaigns. Tampa, Orlando, Daytona Beach, but also crucial to the Obama campaign, was getting a huge voter turnout, not only statewide, but specifically in the 3 big Democrat-leaning counties in southeast Florida, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. And keep in mind, when Obama was the candidate for the Democratic Party, he was already well behind the McCain campaign on the organizational level, because the Republican candidates were not punished like the Democratic candidates were prior to the January 29th earlier than allowed primary. So Huckabee, Romney, Giuliani, Thompson, and Senator John McCain all had an organizational advantage in Florida prior to January 29th, and Obama really didn't get started till the summer, but he more than made up for it with more volunteers, more offices, and a lot more money spent in Florida in the past month. Britt.
Interesting, Phil. Thanks very much. Let's take a look now at what is a fairly long list of states whose polls have closed, but which you can't call yet. Florida, where Phil is, being one of them. The list is pretty long, as we say. Florida, you can't, too close to call. Indiana, too close to call. North Carolina, same thing. Virginia still 2 hours and 43 minutes after the polls closed there. Missouri, still too close to call. Texas, we don't have a lot of doubt about Texas. I don't think Obama ever went there, but it's still too close to call. Polls closed there about 45 minutes ago. Colorado, still too close. South Dakota. North Dakota we've called for McCain. South Dakota too close. Arizona, McCain's home state. Now, that's a fairly recent poll closing, 9 o'clock, but still can't call it. It got to be a race in Nebraska. Boy, that would be a shocker, wouldn't it? But it's still too close to call. So there we go. So, okay, we got to take a break here. We'll be right back.
Serving my country, I have betrayed my conscience. We have to